All right, welcome back. This is going to be a short video. I'm just going to introduce the topics of weathering and erosion, and then we are going to talk about it more specifically, what happens on each of the planets, and have an activity on Friday when we come back to class. But I want to have plenty of time for the activity, so I'm doing a short video here just to introduce the topic, and we'll come back to it. So really, in this video, I want to focus on what is the difference between weathering and erosion. Okay, so weathering is when you have things like wind, water, and there's an extra one, the sun, radiation from the sun, solar radiation, work on the rocks on the planet and break them up. So weathering is all about breaking apart rocks, right? Water could come in forms of liquid or ice. I'm just going to add that in there because we'll talk about that later. So either liquid or ice water can break rocks down over time. The solar radiation is the really interesting one. That's not much of an issue on Earth because we have a beautiful atmosphere. But since we're talking about all of the terrestrial planets here, we have to look at those planets that don't have atmospheres to protect from the harsh ultraviolet, even X-rays and things coming from the sun. And they can actually break apart rocks over the billions of years that our planets have been around on places like the moon and Mercury. So weathering is the active breaking down of rocks by wind, water, or this new one, what we don't think about on Earth, solar radiation. We're mostly going to be talking about wind and water when we talk about the planets. Um, but for those planets without atmospheres, Mercury and our moon, solar radiation is really the only game when it comes to deteriorating surface features. That's why we see these craters that have been around for ages and ages and ages, because there's nothing to change them. Erosion is when we take that weathered material and we move it around with our wind and our water or ice. Okay, so wind, water, and ice can move the weathered material through rivers, through glaciers, winds, dust storms, things like that. So erosion is you're moving it around. And when you move that weathered material around, you're changing the surface. That's what this is all about. That's what tectonism and volcanism and now erosion, they change the surface of the planet so it doesn't look like a bunch of craters from 4 billion years ago anymore. Erosion specifically, when you talk about weathering, it breaks down that rock and then erosion takes it away. So if you have mountains, the rock is broken down and then washed away by a river or blown away. So the high places get lower and those rocks move from high to low and the low places get filled in. So erosion wears down the high places and fills in the low places. We see all kinds of different features. We're very familiar with these on Earth, but we'll see them on a couple of the other planets too. That we get features like valleys, canyons, deltas. We are all familiar with deltas right here in South Louisiana, and other features, right? I can't too many to list. I'm sure at some point in your life you've had a class where you've talked about some of these features. Here's a picture of our beautiful Louisiana Delta and that sediment building new land, filling in the low places. That sediment ultimately came from higher places further north of here. For our purposes, though, since we're talking about why all the planets are different, we have to remember that these processes of erosion, they're ultimately erasing the surface. They are changing the surface. They're taking away old things like craters or even mountains that replace the craters and changing them again. It's a constant process of change. So we get this young surface. The old is gone, the new has come. We get young surfaces. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. We will talk about how wind and water change planets like Earth and Mars next time. Watch the rest of the videos, take your notes, let me know if you have any questions. I'll see y'all on Friday.